Our story begins with a sister who thinks things are still like the past life, where he risked everything to beat up the school bully, only for her to tell everyone that he was just a desperate lapdog. She even teamed up with that bully to report him to the teacher, causing him to face disciplinary action and miss his college entrance exams. The most ridiculous part was that after graduation, she actually stayed with the bully and they eventually married. To be honest, it was a complete betrayal. But now that he has been reborn, there is no way he will ruin his reputation and future for her again. We find him in the teacher's office, listening to their lies. He finds the whole situation laughable. In his previous life, he had tried so hard to argue his case, but he failed every single time. Initially, he didn't quite understand why the teacher refused to believe him. Later, he realized this so-called questioning was just a formality from the very start. Yes, a total sham. Since Zhao Tianlei is the son of the dean, the class teacher, Song Wenba, already knew how this would end. No amount of explanation would help or result in punishment. Furthermore, Chen Sairu wasn't standing on his side at all. Sure enough, after Song Wenba received Sairu's biased answer, he didn't hesitate for a second. The teacher nodded and told the other two they could leave first. Then, Song Wenba turned to Lin Yufei with a sigh, asking what he should do with him. He noted that Yufei's grades weren't bad, so why drop the ball during the critical senior year? He even suggested that if he liked Sairu, he should wait until after graduation. The teacher lectured him that hitting someone was wrong and informed him that the punishment was already finalized. He was ordered to write a 1,500-word self-reflection letter to be read during a school-wide announcement. With only 100 days until the exams, the teacher warned him not to ruin his life over this. However, Yufei simply looked on with an expressionless face and calmly stated that he refused. Hearing this, Song Wenba's temper immediately flared up. The teacher's eyes widened in disbelief as he asked what he meant by refuse. He demanded to know if Yufei realized the magnitude of the mistake he had made. He argued that the other students' parents were already being lenient by not pursuing legal charges. He added that whether Yufei wrote the letter or not, the punishment stood. If he wouldn't admit his mistake, the teacher threatened to call his parents. At that moment, Yufei actually smiled. It was a cold, knowing sort of smile. The teacher immediately opened the student records on his computer, found Yufei's mother's phone number, and dialed it right then and there. To be honest, Yufei didn't care. Compared to the grievances he endured in his past life, even failing his exams and disappointing his parents, this was nothing. He had already reached his breaking point. Now, nothing could block his path. No matter what the teacher said, he had no intention of apologizing for something he didn't do. He remained firm in his stance. He told the teacher that he wasn't wrong, and that the teacher knew the truth better than anyone. He didn't care about the punishment anymore, and simply walked out. He turned and walked straight out of the office. After all, as a regressor, he wasn't about to be intimidated by a mere teacher now that he had returned to his youth. Being back in his senior year, he was determined never to bow his head or admit to a mistake he didn't commit. He remembered how his previous failure had devastated him. The exam questions from that year were still vivid in his mind, and he vowed to reclaim his lost glory. When he returned to the classroom, the atmosphere was buzzing. The entire class was in an absolute uproar. He simply told them he had no intention of writing the letter, then sat down and opened his books to begin reviewing. To be honest, he had a lot of catching up to do. His classmate, Sun Fei, gave him a thumbs up and asked with a grin what the teacher had said about his refusal. Yufei just shrugged with an air of complete indifference. He noted that the teacher would likely call his parents. Hearing this, Chen Sairu grew anxious and immediately pulled him out into the hallway to talk. Sairu began to plead with him, asking how he could possibly refuse the teacher's demands and what would happen if the situation escalated. She admitted her lie had likely upset him. She apologized, claiming she didn't want to lie, but argued that it was better for only one of them to take the punishment rather than both. A very convenient logic, indeed. She even asked if he would only be happy if she were punished too, putting on a pitiful, pleading act in hopes of convincing him to take the fall once again. In his past life, he had fallen for this act and ended up carrying the burden alone, becoming a total fool in the process. But this time, things were different. He wasn't about to repeat the same mistake. He asked her why she was helping Zhao Tianlei if she claimed not to like him, remaining firm in his refusal. Sairu tried to explain desperately, insisting she wasn't helping him but simply didn't want things to become too complicated. She was terrified of the consequences. She begged him for help, saying she didn't want her parents to find out and promising him a reward if he complied. Yufei just gave her a knowing smile. He asked what she could possibly offer. Biting her lip, she suggested that since he liked her, she might give him a chance to pursue her, which, naturally, was a ridiculous offer. He laughed and told her to save that opportunity for someone else before turning back to the classroom. He had been blind once. He wouldn't be blind again. He realized that if he were to pursue anyone, it should be his true, white moonlight, not a manipulative girl like her. Suddenly, his eyes lit up with a realization. He remembered that at this time, that other girl was likely still being bullied at the neighboring school. Not long after, the teacher summoned him back to the office. There, he saw his mother looking at him with a complex expression. Clearly, she never expected her son to be involved in a fight over a high school romance. After all, for a long time, he had been the kind of well-behaved, obedient student with consistently excellent grades. The teacher told him he had already explained the situation. He suggested Yufei explain things to his mother himself. His mother, Hyakin, sighed deeply and pulled her son into a corner of the office to talk. We see him lean in close to his mother's ear to explain the truth quietly. Finally, he pulled out his phone and opened a specific message. It was the text Shinsairu had sent him. His mother was visibly shaken with anger for a long moment, realizing her son had been framed. To be honest, she was furious. She demanded to know how that girl could lie like that. Immediately, she handed the phone to the class teacher, Song Winba, to refute his claims. She told him her son wasn't lying and hadn't gone there because of some social media post. It was because this female student claimed she was being harassed. Her son had only intervened because he couldn't stand by and watch. Teacher Song's eyes widened, clearly not expecting such a chat record to exist. However, he gritted his teeth and argued that while the lying was wrong, the fact remained that Lin Yufei had hit someone, and he had hit an athlete, no less. He argued that if the boy's limbs were injured, it would ruin his exams. Then, Teacher Song turned his attention back to lecturing Yufei once again. He insisted he was only asking Yufei to reflect on the mistake of using violence. He claimed he would surely discipline Sairu for lying as well. But setting all that aside, he insisted Yufei was still in the wrong. Yufei just laughed at the absurdity of it all. Setting all that aside, truly incredible. Who would have thought a teacher could say such things? He joked that if they were ignoring facts, perhaps he was actually the first emperor of Qin. The fault lay with them, so he asked why he was the only one being punished. He suggested they punish all three of them together. He didn't mind at all. Teacher Song was absolutely livid. He pointed out that the boy showed no remorse and even had the audacity to talk back to his superior. He declared that a 1,500-word apology wasn't enough. He wanted 3,000 words and a school-wide public criticism. The boy seemed completely unrepentant. But Yufei countered with a smile, noting that Zhao Tianlei would never be publicly punished anyway. He then asked the teacher if he was even fit for his job. Hearing this, the teacher stood up abruptly and shouted, asking if Yufei was now daring to insult his own teacher, which, in a way, he certainly was. Teacher Song turned to the other parents present to criticize the boy's attitude. He claimed he no longer wanted to handle this and would take it to the dean's office. Yufei asked what use that would be, revealing he knew Zhao Tianlei was the dean's son. He knew the dean would never let his own son suffer. This statement caused a total uproar. Half an hour later, we find them all gathered in the office of the dean of students. Dean Lu Chong sat there with a stern expression, criticizing them by saying he had already heard everything that happened in the teacher's office. He argued that regardless of who was right or wrong, there was a serious issue with Yufei's attitude, especially since he had insulted his teacher. The dean claimed the homeroom teacher was so upset his heart was racing, then asked if Yufei really believed a father would let his own son off the hook. He promised to punish his own son later, but insisted that Yufei must apologize to the teacher and read a 3,000-word self-reflection to the school. He stated that the boy's behavior was far too egregious, and if he couldn't recognize his mistakes, the school simply couldn't teach him anymore. Hearing that last part, Hyakin immediately began to worry, asking the dean if he was actually suggesting they would expel her son. She reminded him that it was already the third year of high school, but Lu Chong just sat there irritably, noting how the boy disrespected his teachers. He asked how they were supposed to teach a student who claimed a teacher wasn't fit for the job, claiming they were truly powerless to help him. His mother tried to explain that her son was just a bit stubborn, but before she could finish, Yufei suddenly blurted out that it was no big deal. He suggested that if it didn't work out, he could just transfer, as he was tired of this school anyway and the one next door was quite good. Dean Lu was absolutely livid, pointing a finger at the boy while telling his mother that he was giving Yufei one final chance to repent. He gave him the choice to either admit his mistakes or drop out, to which Yufei simply replied that he didn't want to study there anymore anyway. Once the news spread, the entire class was in an uproar, with friends asking if he was crazy to transfer right before the college entrance exams. Several close classmates tried to persuade him to just write the apology, as the exams were a major life event that shouldn't be thrown away. They mentioned that the teacher had said if he wrote the 3,000 words, the punishment might be lessened. Even Shun Sairu chimed in, claiming the teacher wasn't even angry until Yufei insisted on arguing and making things worse for everyone. She complained that his actions were now getting her punished too, and asked if he was happy now that her parents had to be called in. As Sairu began to cry, saying her parents were already on their way, the other students questioned if Yufei was even a man for making a girl weep. Suddenly, the room went silent as Vice Principal Guahaiba cleared his throat and asked for Lin Yufei to step outside for a moment. With the entire class watching him with complex expressions, Yufei walked out to the hallway to speak with the vice principal alone. We see the vice principal begin what should have been a friendly talk, only to launch into a lecture about how a student must never disrespect a teacher, even if they are being treated unfairly. He accused the boy of being arrogant just because of his grades, before shouting that the school had no shortage of students like him and didn't need him there. He told Yufei that if he didn't want to study, he should just leave, to which the boy calmly agreed, leaving Vice Principal Guahaiba gasping for air in pure frustration. It was truly the first time he had encountered such a stubborn student, and in his rage, he told him to simply drop out. Meanwhile, Shun Sairu's parents finally arrived on the scene. Instead of disciplining their daughter, they immediately tried to distance her from the situation, pointing a finger at Yufei with a look of utter disdain. Sairu's mother demanded to know who he thought he was, accusing him of lying and insisting that he be moved to another class so he couldn't influence her daughter anymore. She even claimed he was harassing Sairu. Hearing this, Hyakin was ready to explode in her son's defense, but Yufei stepped in before she could speak. He told his mother not to worry and stated clearly that he was dropping out, confident that his grades would only improve once he was away from this place. The physics teacher, Qin Shuhui, let out a heavy sigh, mentioning that he had planned to recommend Yufei for a major physics competition the following month. It was a rare opportunity where a good result could even earn him extra points on the college entrance exams, but since there was only one spot per class, it would have to go to someone else. Hearing about the extra points, Sairu's mother shamelessly smiled and asked if her daughter could take the spot and give the competition a try instead. Teacher Qin could only offer an awkward smile, noting that Sairu's physics grades were, to be honest, quite average. 2 days later, Yufei brought his withdrawal papers to his homeroom teacher. He stood before the man, waiting for the final signature that would end his time at the school. The atmosphere was tense as they faced each other one last time. It was a moment of no return for both the student and the teacher. Yufei told the teacher that if he apologized now, he might consider staying to help him win the chemistry competition, which would surely look good on the teacher's record. Song Wenba's face turned dark with rage as he told the boy to just get out, quickly signing the withdrawal form to be rid of him once and for all. He told Yufei to take the papers to the dean's office for a signature and then to the principal. A moment later, we find Yufei standing in the dean's office. The dean signed the papers while making sure to throw a few final insults his way, and finally, Yufei made his way to the principal's office. This time, he was looking for Principal Zhang. Taking a deep breath, he introduced himself as Lin Yufei and officially submitted his application to leave. Yufei handed over the application, asking for a signature to finalize his withdrawal, while Principal Lu Xinyun frowned as he scanned the details on the form. The reason for leaving was listed as a conflict with the English teacher, making study impossible. The principal looked up, recognizing him as the student who had defied his superiors. Deep down, Principal Lu Xinyun felt it was a pity to lose a student with such good grades, yet he couldn't ignore the boy's recent behavior. Between the fighting and the blatant disrespect toward both teachers and the dean, he felt such a student simply couldn't stay. Meanwhile, a faint smile played on Yufei's lips. With a sudden spark of inspiration, the boy mentioned he had heard the school was applying for provincial model status, suggesting he might be of use for that goal. He calmly proposed that if the homeroom teacher and the dean apologized to him, he might consider staying, a suggestion that earned him a sharp glare from Principal Lu. It was the first time anyone had dared to make demands of him. Offended by such arrogance, the principal shouted for him to get out, refusing to tolerate such insolence. He signed the papers immediately to finalize the withdrawal, and a little later, Yufei returned to the classroom to pack his things while his seatmate, Sun Fei, sighed heavily. Sun Fei lamented that his academic life was over now that he had no one to copy homework from, prompting Yufei to roll his eyes and jokingly tell him to actually try studying. Sun Fei explained that he tried to learn, but simply couldn't, a familiar excuse. We see Yufei recall that in his past life, Sun Fei was one of his few true friends. They had even ended up in the same city for university after Yufei's college entrance exams went poorly, maintaining a bond that lasted through the years. It was Sun Fei who had eventually broken the news that Chen Sairu and Zhao Tianlei were dating, and soon after graduation, word spread that they were getting married. They had invited many old classmates to the wedding, leaving Yufei as the only one who felt like a fool. Looking back now, the whole memory seemed absurdly pathetic. In the present, Sun Fei glanced toward Chen Sairu and whispered a bit of gossip, mentioning that Sairu's mother had been busy in the classroom earlier. Apparently, she had warned the other students to keep an eye out and make sure Yufei didn't harass her daughter anymore, a claim that was, frankly, quite ridiculous. Yufei simply laughed it off, noting that it didn't matter since he was transferring anyway. Just then, the final bell rang, signaling the end of the day and his time at the school. As he turned to walk out the door, a voice called out to him. It was Chen Sairu, looking hesitant as she tried to explain herself. She claimed she hadn't intended to hurt him, her conscience seemingly pricked now that things had ended in his withdrawal. Yufei stopped and turned back toward her. With an expressionless face, he told her honestly that he had been angry when she lied to the teacher, admitting he hadn't expected her to be that kind of person. Sairu looked as though she might cry, insisting she would never intentionally harm him, but Yufei simply watched her, no longer moved by her tears. Deep down, he realized that old spark of affection had vanished completely. Her explanations were nothing more than a thin veil for her true nature. He couldn't help but snap, calling her out for siding with Zhao Tianlei, before turning his back and walking away for good. Those words had been bottled up inside him for a very long time. He had even fantasized about saying them at their wedding. To be honest, finally speaking his mind felt incredibly liberating. He realized that in this new life, he would never live in silence again. Upon returning home, the first thing he did was log onto the first high school forum to find the story thread he had started. He posted a sincere apology, explaining that due to personal reasons and his withdrawal from school, the updates would have to stop. We see that he had originally started the web novel just for fun to test his writing talent, never expecting his transfer to happen so suddenly. Since he was leaving First High, there was no reason to continue the thread there, so he left a final note for his small band of readers. As soon as the hiatus was announced, a flood of comments appeared from fans asking why he was stopping and hoping for an early return. He smiled at the messages, realizing he might actually have a gift for this. Soon enough, Monday morning arrived. The transfer to Second High went smoothly. Although the faculty was similar to his old school, the graduation rates were slightly lower. His father, driving with a stern expression, grumbled about the trouble he'd caused, noting that even his grandfather had been startled by the news. He warned Yufei that he was lucky Second High accepted him, or there would have been hell to pay. Shortly after, they arrived at the gates. Because his grades were solid, the paperwork was finished quickly, and he was assigned to Class 3 to 4, the top-tier science track. The dean introduced him to his new homeroom teacher, Liang Yuding, who also taught English, before leaving them to get acquainted. It was then that Yufei made a small, specific request. He asked if he could sit next to a student named Wenmingqi. Teacher Liang was surprised, asking if they were already acquainted. He simply smiled and explained she was an old classmate. They reached the classroom where the math teacher was busy handing out exams. Liang gave a polite nod and led Yufei inside. She addressed the class with a warm smile, introducing the new transfer student and gesturing for Yufei to step forward. He introduced himself as Lin Yufei, claiming his grades were average, but his character was excellent, and that he never, ever got into fights. Standing nearby, the homeroom teacher, Liang Yuding, nearly burst out laughing before announcing to the class that Lin Yufei would be joining them from now on. She assigned him to sit next to Wenmingqi. As she spoke, a quiet girl wearing glasses looked up and stole a quick glance at him. This was actually the first time he had seen Mingqi in person, and he immediately noticed how cautious and timid she seemed to be. She appeared to be the type of girl who rarely spoke or socialized, the kind who might even be picked on by her more assertive classmates. In any typical classroom, such students keep a very low profile and have almost no presence, though they are often the ones people remember later. He took the initiative to walk over, moving his desk and chair to sit beside Mingqi, while the math teacher handed him a copy of the test. The teacher told him to take a seat and mentioned they would go over the paper tomorrow. However, no one expected what happened when the bell rang. As soon as class ended, our new transfer student became like an animal on display in a zoo, with even students from the hallway crowding around to stare. The whispers and pointing began immediately, with one student claiming they heard from a cousin at First High that he was expelled for fighting an athlete. Another rumor suggested he had fought over a girl who didn't even like him back, a classic case of unrequited obsession, or so they thought. The laughter grew as they labeled him a simp. He never imagined that the drama involving Shinsairu would follow him to a completely different school. Despite the gossip, the physics representative, Wei Yingjia, came over to greet him, calling him a legend for getting expelled over a fight. A rather attractive student named Shin Xinyue joined them, laughing as she teased Yingjia for not knowing the full story yet. She claimed he had fought an athlete over the school beauty, and since that athlete was a teacher's son, he was forced to leave. It was a dramatic tale, to be sure, even if the details were becoming more exaggerated with every whisper. He curled his lip, realizing that transferring schools hadn't helped his reputation at all. His past had arrived before he even finished sitting down. Xinyue blinked at him and suddenly asked, with a playful glint in her eyes, if he wanted to give up on Sairu and try chasing her instead. The surrounding students laughed, reminding her she already had Zheng Yensong, but she quickly retorted that she had never actually said yes to him. She admitted she liked top students, noting that a top 10 student from First High would easily be top 3 here, and she found his sense of humor charming. She pointed out the irony of a top student calling his grades average and a fighter claiming he never brawls, looking at him with genuine anticipation. Xinyue continued her playful interrogation, asking what he thought of her or even offering to chase him herself, claiming he was exactly her type. She insisted that unlike Sairu, she would be moved to tears if someone fought for her. Meanwhile, he took a moment to carefully observe her. He had to admit she was quite the little beauty for a high schooler, likely to become a campus star in college, but then a voice cut in. The newcomer sneered that he was nothing but a simp who fought for a girl who didn't even like him, only to end up expelled for his trouble. Zheng Yensong shot him a warning glare, telling him he'd better stay far away from Xinyue before turning to leave with his group of friends. They headed out with their basketballs, and while in his past life such a grand warning might have actually intimidated him, things were different now. Back then, Yensong's delinquent posture would have seemed threatening, but looking at this tough student now, he found the whole display rather comical. To be honest, the people who act the most arrogant in school usually turn out to be quite ordinary once they finally enter the real world. He mused that the pretty girls often end up divorced or married to wealthy older men, a cynical thought that made him turn his gaze elsewhere. He looked at Wenmingqi, who was quietly focused on her homework, and decided his adorable future rich lady was a much better prospect. Leaning on his desk, he tentatively asked if she knew who he was too. Mingqi froze for a moment before slowly shaking her head. Relieved, he suggested they start fresh and introduced himself as Lin Yufei, while Mingqi watched him with a mix of nervousness and lingering concern. She glanced at the door where Yensong had vanished and asked if he really fought. He denied it, but she told him to be careful anyway. When he asked why, she whispered that Yensong might actually try to hit him, leaving Yufei momentarily stunned by her blunt honesty. She explained quite seriously that it was because Yin-song liked Xinyue, but Yufei simply brushed it off, casually asking if she had a boyfriend instead. The sudden question caught Mengqi completely off guard, and she could only stare at the new transfer student in shock before shaking her head no. With a glint in his eyes, he pressed further, asking what she thought of him and if she'd like to be together, which sent her into a panic. Her face turned bright red as she stammered about a math problem she didn't understand, claiming she needed to go find a teacher immediately. She hurried out of the classroom with her test paper. Clearly, a girl with her shy personality had never dealt with such a direct confession before. He had likely terrified her, yet he found himself feeling strangely expectant. Perhaps life at second high would be quite interesting after all. It was all becoming quite interesting. It wasn't until the class bell rang that when Mengqi nervously returned to the room, her head bowed so low she didn't dare look up. She clutched her test paper and hurried straight to her seat. Clearly, that sudden confession had left her feeling both incredibly anxious and painfully shy. She simply had no idea how to respond. A moment later, the English teacher walked in, glanced at Lin Yufei, and addressed the class with a stern expression. She mentioned hearing some gossip about the new student, stating firmly that regardless of his past, he was now a member of their class. She warned them not to whisper behind their classmates' backs before handing out reading comprehension papers for them to complete and discuss. It seems the teacher, Liang Yuding, had heard the rumors about Yufei's transfer and chose this moment to defend him. As the lesson proceeded, Yufei made a rather pleasant discovery. His English level completely crushed that of his high school peers. Although he had fumbled his original college entrance exams, he had eventually passed the Level 6 English certification in university. Whether it was his vocabulary or his grasp of complex sentence structures, his writing and reading comprehension skills were far superior to an average high schooler's. To be honest, it was hardly a fair fight. After finishing the reading section, he found he had only missed a single question. In his past life, a poor performance had left him with only 112 points. Back then, a good day might have netted him 125, but in this life, he felt confident he could easily score above 140. After all, he possessed two massive advantages. First, he had spent years memorizing advanced vocabulary for his university degrees and postgraduate exams. And second, he actually remembered the future exam questions. Up at the podium, teacher Liang Yuding announced it was time to check their answers. She asked those who had missed 5 questions or fewer out of the 25 to raise their hands. Suddenly, a wave of hands went up across the room. We see Yufei scan the room. Out of 48 students, only 8 held their hands high. It seems the academic level of this top-tier class wasn't actually that far off from the city's best school. When the teacher asked for those with 4 errors or fewer, 3 students lowered their hands. Only 5 students remained, their hands still held confidently in the air. It appeared their English skills were quite formidable. However, when she asked for those with 3 errors or fewer, only 1 person kept their hand up. Teacher Liang Yuding smiled and asked Xinyue how many she had missed. Xinyue proudly replied that she had only gotten 2 wrong. The teacher nodded in approval, noting that the test was quite difficult, as she had pulled the questions from actual past entrance exams. Then, casting another glance his way, she asked curiously, Lin Yufei, your English shouldn't be bad. How many did you miss? As soon as she spoke, everyone turned to look at him, waiting for an answer. Thinking it best to keep a low profile as a new transfer, he replied casually, Teacher, I missed quite a few. I didn't perform very well. That's all right, she said. Your seatmate Wen Mengqi is good at English. If you're confused, ask her. His eyes lit up as he agreed. That's perfect. I have so much to learn. Mengqi immediately grew tense, saying guiltily, Teacher, I'm not very good at teaching others. Clearly, his earlier confession had spooked her. She didn't even dare look at him. Xinyue, however, offered a smile. I can do it, teacher. I'm the English class rep. I can help the new student. After saying this, Xinyue gave Yufei a playful wink, flashing what she clearly thought was a charming smile. But Yufei just smiled back and said, No thanks, Mengqi teaching me is enough. Just then, Zheng Yinsong spoke up from his seat with a lazy, arrogant tone, and they called him a top student. Missing over 5 questions on this paper means he probably won't even break 120 on the real exam. I thought the first high legend was more impressive. Xinyue rolled her eyes at Yinsong. It was obvious he was targeting the newcomer. He's a top student overall, not just in one subject. Maybe he's better at math or Chinese. You have your own weak subjects, don't you? The teacher cut in. All right, first high is first high, and we are second high. We aren't inferior to any other school, so don't belittle yourselves. Speaking of which, I just remembered, we have an English-speaking competition next week. Each class has 3 slots. Sign up with me if you're interested. This is a district-wide exam that requires a vocabulary beyond the high school level. It tests your extracurricular knowledge. If you place, there are certificates and even prize money. A good performance brings honor to second high. Hearing this, Yufei suddenly felt a surge of interest. He raised his hand immediately. Teacher, I want to sign up. Yinsong mocked him. There are only 3 spots for the whole class, you know. New guy, I'm not targeting you, but with only 3 spots, we definitely need a screening process. Besides, the teacher just said, it's for the school's honor, so we must send the best. Teacher Liang Yuding smiled. Tell you what, let's see. How many people sign up? If it's exactly 3, there's no need to compete. If there are more, we'll hold a screening. We'll leave it at that. As she was leaving, Liang Yuding walked over to Yufei's side. "Let me see your paper," she said, likely curious about the new transfer student's actual level. And so, Liang Yuding wasn't entirely sure of his English level yet. She wanted to see how he had actually performed to know how to help him improve his grades later. He paused for a moment before replying. "It's right here, teacher. And remember to pick me for the speaking competition. I'm actually quite strong." Teacher Liang just smiled. We see her offer a non-committal "we'll see," but the next second, as she flips through his paper, she freezes. The entire paper is correct, save for a single multiple-choice question. "Didn't you say you missed quite a few? I only see one mistake here." As soon as she says this, the entire class instantly reacts with shock. Their eyes widen as they all turn to stare at him. Meanwhile, with a look of utter sincerity, he sighs and explains that missing even one question is hard for him to accept. To him, anything less than a perfect score is a failure. Naturally, the classroom erupts into a frenzy, and the English rep, Shen Xinyue, is particularly impressed. She covers her mouth in excitement, whispering about how impressive this first-high legend really is. Zheng Yansong, however, feels his jaw twitch as he glances at his own paper. He grits his teeth, muttering that the new guy is just a show-off. Teacher Liang can't help but chuckle at the boy's dramatic standards, telling him he's quite a character. "Why didn't you raise your hand earlier?" "Well done, keep it up." Seeing his paper, her mind is finally at ease. Initially, the administration had told her he was a top-tier student. She had honestly started to worry that English might be his weak point and that his strengths lay elsewhere. To be fair, that worry seems quite unnecessary now. It's clear his English is outstanding. Just as he is tucking his paper away, he hears a female student behind him complaining about a sudden hiatus. "Why did it stop updating?" "Xinyue, that novel from the first high forum you recommended has gone silent. It seems the local gossip has shifted to literature." Two girls immediately huddle around Xinyue to discuss it, even when Mengqi can't resist pulling out her phone to check the forum for herself. Sure enough, there is a hiatus notice. Feeling a bit curious, he asks her if she reads it too. Mengqi bites her lip and gives a cautious, small nod. When he asks if it's any good, she nods again, confirming it's great. He smiles with a sense of secret satisfaction, though he casually remarks that he thinks it's just average. This comment is overheard by Jiang Shiqi, the student sitting in front of them. Shiqi turns around to look at this top student from First High with genuine curiosity. "Wait, didn't you come from First High? Do you know who wrote this novel?" he asks with a look of surprise, wondering if everyone is really reading it. Mengqi answers in a low voice, explaining that their teacher, Mr. Luo, was the one who introduced it to them. He is surprised to hear a teacher was involved. Shiqi explains that Mr. Luo is their Chinese teacher. Apparently, a few days ago during class, he mentioned it to the students in passing. He told them there was a very interesting novel on the First High forum. Naturally, they were curious, and after checking it out, they found it truly captivating. Shiqi continues, exclaiming that First High is truly full of talent if someone there can write such a novel. It's only then that the realization finally hits him. He realizes why so many people are reading his story. It turns out a teacher gave it a massive boost. With a slight smile, he decides to wait for Chinese class. He plans to ask the teacher for his opinion. If all goes well, he'll submit it online to become a contracted author. Just then, Shen Xinyue suddenly calls out. She asks loudly if the new student, Lin Yifei, knows the person writing that novel on the First High forum. Suddenly, every eye in the room is fixed on him. They are clearly curious. After all, as a top 10 student from First High, there's a good chance he might actually know the author. He just offers a small smile. "I know him," he says simply. As soon as the words leave his lips, the students erupt in excitement, claiming that if this were a TV show, it would be a hit. They admit they've never seen this genre before and think the author is a genius. He intentionally plays hard to get, smiling as he says it's not that amazing. He promises to ask the author when the updates will resume. Facing this crowd of fans, he truly feels the charm of being a novelist for the first time. He even steals a glance at his adorable, wealthy seatmate, when Mengqi, and finds her looking at him like a curious child waiting for an answer. He tells them he'll let them know once he finds out, and the crowd disperses with a sigh, though they take it as good news. Just then, the bell rings. It's time for Chinese class, and the teacher, Luo Wenxuan, walks into the room. He immediately asks where the new student is, and Yifei raises his hand. Teacher Luo nods, noting that he's seen Yifei's name on the First High rankings several times and remembers him well. It seems he's made quite an impression. "Chinese is your weak point, isn't it?" the teacher asks. Yifei admits it, explaining that classical Chinese and reading comprehension have always been his struggles. He recalls that during the college entrance exams, Chinese was his only normal performance, but even then, he only managed to score 114. As the teacher begins the lesson, Yifei turns to his seatmate with a playful grin, telling Mengqi that her handwriting is as elegant and refined as she is. He suggests she'd probably look beautiful without her glasses. Mengqi bites her lip shyly. To be honest, she has absolutely no experience being pursued by boys. She simply doesn't know how to respond to such direct flirting. It's a completely new territory for her, and she remains flustered and silent. Finally, the bell rings to end the session. Teacher Luo walks down from the podium and looks down at Yifei, who is currently busy playing on his phone. The teacher's expression darkens instantly as he realizes Yifei has been playing for the entire period. Around them, the other students settle in to watch the drama. Those sitting nearby had noticed the top student from first high on his phone all class long. And now, inevitably, he has been caught by the teacher. We see Yifei nod calmly as he admits that Chinese class isn't exactly his favorite. Teacher Luo Wenxuan, face hardening, sternly tells him to step outside as the classroom erupts into whispers. The students are buzzing with speculation. Out in the hallway, Luo Wenxuan keeps his expression grim as he demands to know why Yifei was playing on his phone during the lesson. He reminds Yifei that he knows Chinese is his weakest subject, so why wouldn't he want to improve? Yifei simply purses his lips and offers a small, knowing smile. He explains that Chinese isn't actually a weakness. He was doing it on purpose. He wants to request permission to spend future classes writing his own material. Teacher Luo's brow furrows in confusion. The teacher asks what he means by writing things. In response, Yifei hands over his phone. Luo Wenxuan takes it, glances at the screen, and suddenly freezes in total disbelief. He realizes he's looking at future plot points for the novel everyone is obsessed with. Yifei reveals that he is the author from the First High Forum and was just working on an update. Teacher Luo is stunned into silence. He looks closer and confirms that the account on the screen truly belongs to the story's creator. It really is him. The teacher takes a sharp breath, completely caught off guard. His expression shifts instantly from stern criticism to one of genuine, surprised admiration. After all, he is a fan of the story himself. Otherwise, he wouldn't have recommended it to the class. A smile begins to play on Luo Wenxuan's lips as he considers the situation. He notes that while the novel is excellent, Yifei still needs to attend class. The college entrance exams are far too important to ignore, regardless of his literary talent. Yifei explains that his Chinese skills are actually quite formidable. He even guarantees a score of over 140 on the final exam, asking the teacher to trust him. He insists he wouldn't gamble with his own future. Teacher Luo frowns, muttering to himself that he still can't just allow it, unless, perhaps, there's a way to prove it. He proposes a challenge. If Yifei can take first place in the upcoming four-school joint exam on Friday, he'll consider it. Yifei asks if he means first place overall or just in Chinese. The teacher specifies Chinese, of course, since Yifei claimed he could hit 140. Even a score of 135 would be enough to prove his point. Without a second thought, Yifei agrees to the deal. If he takes the top spot in Chinese during the joint exams, he gets to spend class time working on his novel. He grins, feeling completely confident in his ability to pull it off. To be honest, he's already looking forward to the challenge. Now, we look toward the four-school joint exam. This is a massive event involving First High, Second High, Experimental High, and Huasher High. Every student across all four schools takes the exact same test. These four schools have the highest college admission rates in the city. First High and Huasher are the top contenders, while Second High follows slightly behind. Experimental High usually brings up the rear. While these scores aren't the final exams, the rankings serve as a critical reference for where each student stands. Historically, those who land at the very top of these joint rankings are considered the prime candidates for the country's most prestigious universities. Before they part ways, teacher Luo Wenxuan asks with a hint of curiosity if Yifei has considered entering the new concept writing competition, given how well he writes. Yifei's eyes light up as he asks if he means the national contest organized by Sprout Literature. Teacher Luo simply nods in confirmation. He suggests Yifei give it a try, mentioning that a few other students from First High have already signed up and are even receiving private tutoring for it. It seems the school leadership mentioned it in a meeting last week. Initially, they weren't going to participate because the national level is so difficult and their chances seemed slim. However, the teacher believes Yifei has a real shot. With a faint smile, Yifei asks if winning would help the school's standing as a provincial model institution. Luo Wenxuan is visibly surprised that the boy even knows about such things. He confirms it would definitely help. It would certainly put Second High on the map. Yifei decides right then and there to sign up. Teacher Luo laughs, telling the boy he likes his spirit, but reminds him he's still waiting for those exam results. He tells Yifei to head back to class, but can't resist asking one last thing. When is the next novel update? Yifei promises a new chapter by tomorrow. The moment he returns to the classroom, he's surrounded by gossiping classmates eager to know what the teacher said. But before he can even sit down, Teacher Luo steps back into the room to announce one more thing. For this Friday's four-school joint exam, there is a new regulation regarding seating. Students won't be testing in their own classrooms. Everyone will be shuffled into different rooms. He specifically asks if Yifei has a problem with that. Quite a few students shoot Yifei a confused look, wondering why the teacher is asking him specifically. Yifei just nods with a smile and says it's no problem. As soon as the teacher leaves, Jiang Shiqi turns around from the front row, dying to know why the teacher was singling him out like that. Yifei shrugs it off, explaining that he asked the teacher for more freedom in class, and in exchange, he promised to take first place in Chinese during the joint exams. Jiang Shiqi's eyes go wide with shock at the mention of taking first place in the entire school. Even when Mingqi is left completely stunned by the claim. She stares at her seatmate in disbelief. Just moments ago, he was asking her for help with Chinese, and now he's claiming he'll be number one. Yifei just chuckles, telling them to keep it down, noting that he might not actually pull it off. Suddenly, he realizes he's starving and wonders why they haven't left for lunch. Jiang Shichi laughs, explaining she was waiting for Wen Mingqi, who insisted on waiting for Yifei since he doesn't have a meal card yet. Yifei can't help but tease her a little. He tells Wen Mingqi she's far too good to him, causing her ears to turn bright red. She says nothing, keeping her head down as she pulls her lunchbox from her desk. The afternoon is filled with an endless stream of practice papers until Yifei's phone pings. It's a message from Sun Fei, asking if he's going to the second high forum. We return to Yifei, who is momentarily stunned to find a message from Sun Fei. It seems his presence at second high is already common knowledge. People are posting his photos on the school forum, asking why he transferred. Apparently, Chun Sairu's classmates are also keeping a very close eye on the situation. Sun Fei mentions that the novel Yifei posted on the forum has gone viral. After only 4 chapters, the whole class is complaining about the lack of updates. Yifei wonders how they knew it was him, but Sun Fei clarifies that they don't, not yet, anyway. However, Sairu likely knows the truth. Even the head teacher at his old school was asking around about the author today. It turns out some provincial officials were visiting for an open class. They happened to see the story and couldn't stop praising it. Now, the principal even wants to add it to the school library's permanent collection. Sun Fei asks if he should tell the teacher who the real author is. Meanwhile, back at First High, Sairu has already walked into the teacher's office. She tells the head teacher, Song Wenba, that she knows exactly who wrote it. Teacher Song is delighted, as he suspected it was one of his own students. He explains that the Education Bureau officials were incredibly impressed by the writing. To be honest, it's the kind of recognition any school would dream of. The principal now wants to start a literature club and have this mysterious student share their writing secrets with the rest of the school. When asked if the author is indeed in their class, Sairu hesitates for a moment before nodding. Teacher Song beams at her, eager for the name. Sairu remains silent for a beat. She is clearly torn about whether to reveal the truth, especially since Yifei has already left the school. Suddenly, Vice Principal Guahaiba calls to check on the progress. Teacher Song confidently assures him that the author is definitely one of his students. After hanging up, he realizes Sairu still hasn't given him the name. He turns back to her, his eyes full of anticipation and excitement. Sairu looks visibly uncomfortable, stammering as she tries to find a way out of the conversation. It's a rather awkward position to be in, really. She quietly suggests that perhaps they should just drop the matter. Teacher Song laughs, jokingly asking if she was the one who wrote it herself. Sairu immediately waves her hands in a panic, insisting that she isn't the author. Finally, she works up the courage to say the name, Lin Yifei. Teacher Song is completely frozen in shock. He can hardly believe his ears. The brilliant author everyone is praising is actually the boy who just left? Sairu explains that the account used to post the story belongs to him. Teacher Song's head is spinning as he tries to process this impossible news. He mutters to himself that Yifei's grades were never that great, and his essays were always just average. Sairu can only look away, feeling guilty. Sairu explains that while she doesn't know how he did it, the account definitely belongs to Yifei. She even double-checked their old chat logs to be absolutely certain. Teacher Song Wenba immediately rubs his temples, feeling a wave of pure frustration wash over him. He asks her why on earth she didn't mention this sooner, especially before his call with the vice principal. He is spiraling now, realizing he spent the last few minutes bragging about a student who isn't even at the school anymore. He had promised Vice Principal Gua that everything was under control. Fortunately, the Education Bureau officials didn't ask for a face-to-face meeting yet. Otherwise, he'd be in real trouble. Sairu lowers her head apologetically, murmuring that she simply didn't know what to do. She admits she was afraid to speak up, considering Yifei had already dropped out. Teacher Song is beyond annoyed at this point. To be honest, the timing couldn't be worse. The real problem is that he already boasted about the author being in his class in the teacher's group chat. Now he feels like he's effectively slapped his own face in front of his colleagues. The student he argued with and watched leave is the very person the school wants to honor. Gritting his teeth, Teacher Song decides that since Yifei stopped updating, they should just pretend they don't know who the author is. He tells Sairu he will handle the explanation with the school leadership. He sternly warns her not to tell a single soul that Yifei is the one behind the story. Sairu looks like she wants to protest, but she bites her tongue and remains silent. Teacher Song rubs his forehead one last time, trying to compose himself before making the dreaded phone call. He finally dials Vice Principal Guahaiba, his voice trembling slightly as he offers a profuse apology. He claims there has been a bit of a misunderstanding regarding the talented student. He lies, telling the vice principal that the student admitted to just copying the story from somewhere else. He claims there is no more content left, which is why the student was too embarrassed to come forward. After hanging up, Teacher Song lets out a massive sigh of relief. However, to make sure this lie sticks, he realizes he needs to ensure no other students know the truth. He decides he must go to the classroom immediately to warn the others to stop discussing the matter. It's a desperate move to keep his reputation intact, really. He soon arrives at the classroom door, where the English teacher is just about to start the lesson. Teacher Song steps in, forcing a small, tight smile as he addresses the class. He tells them to forget about that novel on the school forum, claiming the principal has decided to drop the matter since the updates have stopped. He instructs them not to mention the author's identity, even if they think they know who it is. He urges them to put all their energy back into their studies instead. He reminds them that the four-school joint exam is approaching and they need to aim for high scores. But just as he turns to leave, a student suddenly shouts out. The student points out that the novel was actually updated just 5 minutes ago. Teacher Song feels a sudden chill run down his spine, as if he's been struck by lightning. He stands there frozen, wondering if he heard correctly. In an instant, the entire class pulls out their phones to check the forum for themselves. Sure enough, the story that had been silent for days has suddenly come back to life. It seems our protagonist isn't quite finished with first high just yet. Class is over. Who told you to look at your phones? Teacher Song roars, demanding everyone hand their devices over. The students sit there, utterly stunned and terrified by his sudden outburst. It isn't until Song Wenba finally storms out of the room that the students can breathe again. They immediately begin whispering, wondering why their teacher suddenly flew into such a blind rage. Meanwhile, Sun Fei seems to have guessed the truth. With a faint smirk, he glances over at Chun Sairu, whose expression confirms his suspicions. Something is definitely wrong. He quickly sneaks a message to Ifei to explain the chaos. Back in his office, Teacher Song rubs his temples, feeling a massive headache coming on as he contemplates his next move. He is at a total loss. He just told the leadership the story was over, and then that brat updated it immediately. To be honest, the timing couldn't be more humiliating. If he admits the author is the student who dropped out, he'd be admitting he lied to his superiors. But if he stays silent, what happens when the school leaders demand to meet the boy? Suddenly, a desperate idea strikes him. Teacher Song picks up the phone and calls the dean of students, Lu Chong, hoping to find a way out of this mess. He explains the situation, but Lu Chong isn't sympathetic. He points out that Song should have just said the boy left, rather than claiming the work was plagiarized. Now that he's updating again, how are you going to explain it? Lu Chong asks coldly. He makes it clear that he won't be dragged down. Song is on his own. Teacher Song grits his teeth, deciding to play dirty. He threatens to reveal that Lu Chong's son bullied Ifei and conspired with a female student to force him out of school. The line goes silent for a long moment. When Lu Chong finally speaks, his voice is icy, asking Song exactly what it is he wants to achieve with this threat. Teacher Song suggests they contact the forum moderator. Under the guise of protecting students' grades, they should simply delete Ifei's account or ban him from posting. Meanwhile, over at the second high school, students have noticed the story is back. Many of them pull out their phones, eager to see what happens next in the narrative. The physics class representative, Wei Yingjia, runs over to Ifei. He asks if Ifei can convince the author to set a fixed update schedule since the writing is so good. But just as they are discussing it, when Mingqi lets out a gasp of shock, the thread has vanished. It seems the story has been deleted entirely without warning. The entire class is left in a state of confusion. One moment they were enjoying the update, and the next, it was gone as if it had never existed. Ifei frowns, sensing something is foul. He checks his own account and confirms the post is gone, a move that feels far too targeted to be a glitch. Impressive, he mutters with a dry, ironic laugh. They're really trying to wipe me out completely. Jiang Shiqi looks at him, confused by his cryptic remark. Before he can explain, the math teacher arrives at the door. Ifei quickly tries to message Sun Fei, only to find that his friend has already reached out to him. Sun Fei's message confirms his fears. The post was deleted, and it was almost certainly the work of their former homeroom teacher, who is desperate to keep the truth buried. Let's not discuss this further, the math teacher says, clearing his throat as he takes the podium. You're all aware of the four-school joint exam this Friday, right? He explains that they will be swapping classrooms for the test and must take it seriously. He then prepares to hand out 2 practice papers from previous years. The teacher notes that he's compiled some parts and written others himself, calling the class representative up to distribute them. But just then, something unexpected happens. Luo Wenxuan, the Chinese teacher, appears at the door with a knock and a smile. Ifei, could you come out for a moment? He asks, piquing everyone's curiosity. The class watches as Ifei heads into the hallway. Once they are alone, teacher Luo lowers his voice and asks why the novel was suddenly deleted. Ifei simply shrugs with a faint smile, claiming he has no idea. Luo is puzzled, mentioning he heard the Education Bureau leaders were actually praising the story. He wonders why it would vanish so abruptly. Ifei's eyes light up as he realizes the truth. It was deleted because he dropped out, making it inconvenient to keep. Teacher Luo realizes the logic in that and laughs. He suggests that since Ifei is at second high now, he should just post the updates on their school forum instead. No one will delete your posts here, Luo encourages him, adding that if he wins the new concept writing competition, the novel might even be published. After returning to class, the math teacher eventually calls for a 5-minute break. It's a brief reprieve, but as Ifei stands up to head out, he is intercepted. Shen Xinyue runs over with a mischievous grin, claiming she knows a secret. To be honest, she looks far too excited about whatever she's discovered. She leans in and whispers directly into his ear, asking if he is the one writing that novel. It seems his cover is blown, at least with her. She suggests he restart the updates on the second high forum and begins clapping happily. Meanwhile, Ifei notices something strange. His desk is suddenly empty. The notebook he borrowed from Wenmingqi has vanished along with his pen. He asks her if she took them back, but she remains pointedly silent. When he reaches out to take them, Mengqi blocks him. "I'm not giving them back," she says coldly. "Go find Shinshinyue if you want help." Ifei chuckles, looking at the stern face of his wealthy little seatmate. "Are you jealous?" he asks. Mengqi just snorts, telling him to stick with his good friend. We see the tension rising between them, though Ifei seems more amused by her reaction than anything else. He gently hushes her to quiet her down, then whispers the truth. He explains how Shinyue found out about the novel and the real reason for his fight with the dean's son. On Wednesday, during PE class, the teacher orders everyone to run 1,500 meters. It's a grueling task, but it reveals something interesting to our protagonist. Watching Mingqi run, Ifei finally understands why no boys pursue her and why she has so few close friends. It likely comes down to her icy, unapproachable nature. Perhaps being mocked by classmates so often is what made her so introverted, but in this moment, Ifei suddenly feels as though he's discovered a hidden treasure. The most important thing is that no one else appreciates this adorable little heiress yet. He decides that from now on, he will be the one to cherish her. We see him join when Mengqi on the track, running right alongside her. Predictably, Mengqi looks down with a self-conscious expression, remaining silent as she runs. Ifei asks what she'd like to drink so he can buy it, adding that she really shouldn't care about those who laugh at her. Only then does Mengqi look up. She raises her head cautiously, though her lingering timidity is plain to see. While still running, she asks in a shy, quiet voice if he is laughing at her too. Before long, the rest of the class finishes their laps. Ifei, Mengqi, and Jiang Shiqi take a moment to rest together on the spot while catching their breath. He smiles and asks if they want to play badminton later, but the two girls shake their heads, saying they'd rather just sit there for a while. As they rest, the others watch Ifei's actions with stunned expressions. It seems Mengqi and Shiqi have both been unfairly labeled by their peers. They aren't unattractive, they simply lack the typical girly charm. Suddenly, Shinshinyue smiles and suggests inviting them over to play with the group. She invites Mengqi and Shiqi to join them in a game of shuttlecock. Ifei uses this free time to post his novel on the Second High Forum. He even takes the opportunity to write and update a brand new chapter. But as he looks up from his work, he notices something is very wrong. Mengqi and Shiqi are both walking away toward the school path with dark expressions. Mengqi is even wiping away tears, prompting Ifei to chase after them. He prepares to ask what happened, but Mengqi merely gives him a look full of grievance and flushed with embarrassment. Without a word, she runs toward the building. Shiqi bites her lip, looking conflicted, before chasing after her friend. She stops to shout back at Ifei, telling him that this is all because of him. Completely bewildered, Ifei catches up and grabs Shiqi's arm, demanding to know why Mengqi is crying. Shiqi sighs and looks back at the other girls. She explains that the girls playing shuttlecock saw him buying water for them earlier and had been gossiping about it the entire time. Shiqi had clarified the water wasn't for her, but for Mengqi. This caused the group to start jeering, mocking the idea that he would actually pursue her. They insulted his taste, calling it unique, and comparing the situation to a fresh flower being stuck in cow dung. Ifei's mouth twitches at the absurdity. He asks in utter disbelief who exactly said that. He wants to know who had the nerve to call him cow dung in this scenario. Shiqi bites her lip again and whispers that, actually, they were calling him the flower. The flower in question immediately turns and walks toward the group of girls playing shuttlecock. As we see Ifei approach, Shinshinyue and her friend seem to realize exactly why he's coming over. Shinyue offers an awkward smile, apologizing and admitting they might have made Mengqi cry. Ifei takes a deep breath. With a serious expression, he tells them to apologize. Knowing they won't say it out loud, he suggests they write a note. Shinyue is stunned, asking if she has to write one too. Feeling a bit jealous, she argues that she doesn't want to. Ifei's eyes narrow as he snaps, asking if he really needs to start shouting for them to apologize. Shinyue is visibly shaken. Even the girls playing nearby are frozen in shock. No one expected Ifei to lose his temper like this. Shinyue's eyes well up. She sinks to the ground, sobbing and wiping away tears. Naturally, this sight causes quite a stir among the boys nearby. Zheng Yinsong rushes over immediately, asking if Ifei bullied her. Shinyue just shakes her head while crying and stands up. She tells him it's none of his business, glares at Ifei, and leaves. Yinsong's mouth twitches as he threatens Ifei after school. That afternoon, the atmosphere in class becomes incredibly strange, filled with whispers as the final study period begins. Shiqi passes a note to Mengqi, mentioning that Ifei made Shinyue cry and that Yinsong is planning a fight. Reading this, Mengqi bites her lip nervously. She looks at Ifei beside her and quietly asks him to look at the note. Her eyes are full of worry as she whispers an apology, suggesting they should perhaps tell the teacher about the threat. Ifei frowns, insisting they can't involve the teacher because it would drag her into the mess, and he wants her protected. Imagine the scene, the four of them in the principal's office. He knows exactly what kind of drama that would spark. Even if the immediate problem were solved, the school gossip would only get worse. He remembers this all too well from his past. He knows that idle rumors can utterly destroy someone's fragile mental state, especially for someone as vulnerable as Mengqi. She already struggles with her self-esteem, and more negative attention is the last thing she needs right now. He tells her not to go, claiming he has a plan. To be honest, dealing with schoolyard brawls is often quite simple. His strategy is simple: show them he's tougher, so they'll back down. With a smirk, Ife slides a note to Mengqi asking if she has any money to spare. He tells her he needs to pool some cash to hire help. To his absolute surprise, just 2 minutes later, he receives a digital transfer from her. Ife stares at the screen in disbelief, counting the digits. The total amount is a staggering 286,000 yuan. He's completely stunned to realize he's sitting next to a literal heiress. She asks if it's enough, offering to ask her mother for more if needed. He laughs, clutching his head at the absurdity of it all. After a moment, he scrolls through his contacts and decides to message Sun Fei directly. He tells Sun Fei that someone is planning to jump him after school and asks him to tell his cousin to gather a crowd at the school gates. He offers 300 per person just for showing up, plus 500 more if they have to fight. Sun Fei is instantly taken aback by the scale. Sun Fei wonders if the school is really that dangerous. Then, Ife transfers 30,000 yuan up front, leaving Sun Fei absolutely speechless. He asks if Ife is seriously planning to hire 100 people for a schoolyard scuffle. As the final bell rings, the students instinctively look back at Ife. Even Xinxingyue can't help but walk over with a conflicted expression. She pulls him to the back of the classroom and whispers that he shouldn't leave yet, as Zheng Yinsong is waiting outside with a gang. Xingyue shakes her head, full of worry. She apologizes, explaining she tried to stop it, but suggests Ife should just apologize to avoid a beating. Ife just finds it amusing and asks if she's actually worried about him. He reminds her to apologize to Mengqi during the evening study session. With that, he walks out of the classroom with total confidence. Seeing she can't convince him, Xingyue turns to Mengqi and pleads for her help. She begs Mengqi to talk some sense into Ife, so he doesn't go out there and get hurt. She truly didn't expect things to escalate this far. Xingyue crouches by Mengqi's desk, her voice trembling with fear as she asks for help. Mengqi simply shakes her head and says she trusts him. Xingyue is nearly driven to tears by the frustration. She argues that trust won't help Ife win a fight against a whole group of thugs. She admits she was just jealous and shouldn't have spoken to them that way, but she genuinely doesn't want to see Ife get hurt. She begs Mengqi to use their close relationship to stop him. Mengqi hesitates for a moment before whispering that Ife has also called for backup. Xingyue is both anxious and angry, clutching her head in confusion. Finally, she grits her teeth and decides to head to the teacher's office to report it. But unexpectedly, Mengqi finds her courage and speaks up, telling her that she can't go. She insists that Xingyue must not tell the teacher. Our young heiress looks remarkably serious now. In the past, she wouldn't have known how to handle this, but now she feels she must trust Ife. She knows that if they involve the teacher now, all of Ife's preparations will be for nothing. Xingyue argues back frantically, asking if she's lost her mind. Xingyue warns that if things escalate, Ife might get expelled again. Mengqi takes a deep breath and calmly repeats that this is exactly why they must trust him. She stands firm on not telling the teacher. Xingyue stares at her with her mouth slightly open, feeling as though she's trapped in a strange dream. Meanwhile, near the school gates, several classmates are whispering amongst themselves. One asks Ife if he's really not afraid to walk out there right now. They remind him that the group outside is close with Zheng Yinsong. Ife just smiles and asks where Yinsong is, only to find out he's missing. Apparently, Yinsong went to the office to ask about homework. Ife is amused by the move, realizing the boy is busy creating an alibi for himself. Lu Xiang laughs, calling Yinsong clever for a top student, but suggests Ife should just apologize to avoid making things so tense. Xiang even offers to mediate, but Ife says nothing. With one hand in his pocket, he simply continues walking toward the school exit. Soon, we see several scooters and motorcycles parked by the road. 7 or 8 thugs are loitering outside, casually smoking cigarettes. Xiang pats Ife on the shoulder, wishes him luck, and makes a quick exit. And as expected, the moment he leaves, the thugs turn their gaze toward Ife. The group shares a smirk, and one with dyed yellow hair begins walking toward him. It's the classic start to a confrontation, really. The yellow-haired youth calls out, telling Ife to come over. The surrounding students are startled and quickly move away, afraid to get involved. Still smoking, the leader puts an arm around Ife's shoulder and asks if he's the new transfer student from class 4. Ife just raises an eyebrow. He looks them over and realizes they're just dropouts from a local vocational school, barely older than himself, trying to look tough. Seeing them on their beat-up scooters trying to block the gate, Ife can't help but chuckle. He asks if Zheng Yinsong was the one who sent them. The yellow-haired youth just shakes his head and tells him they need to talk. To be honest, any normal high schooler would be terrified right now. With the dyed hair, the tattoos, and the smoking, not to mention 2 of them holding metal pipes, it's certainly an intimidating sight for most. But for someone who has lived an entire life and returned, the scene is just a bit ridiculous. And so, he simply smiles and asks what they want. The yellow-haired youth lets out a mocking laugh, asking if this is really it. He expected Ife to have called for backup, but seeing him alone, he sneers at how few they are. The other thugs join in the ridicule, asking Ife who he thinks he is. But just as the words leave their mouths, Sun Fei's cousin emerges from the bus station nearby. He mutters to himself while walking, scanning the area until he spots the group. Suddenly, a massive wave of older, tougher-looking men begins moving in their direction. This formidable crowd marches toward Ife and the small-time thugs, surrounding them completely. The sight is so intense that nearby students and parents freeze in pure shock. Parents instinctively pull their children behind them, and even the school security guard is stunned. With trembling hands, he pulls out his phone to call the school administration. The thugs sent by Zheng Yinsong are suddenly paralyzed with fear as they realize they are vastly outnumbered. One of the newcomers, Brother Liu, looks around in disbelief. He asks if they really needed this many people just to handle a few punks. It's almost comical, really, all this grand preparation just to deal with some dropouts blocking a gate. Brother Liu, having seen Ifei's photo before, smiles and greets him. Ife recognizes him as Sun Fei's cousin and realizes the reinforcements have finally arrived. Ife responds that he didn't expect so few thugs either, as he'd prepared for 20. He explains that the mastermind is currently busy faking an alibi with a teacher. He tells Brother Liu to handle it as he sees fit, noting that since both sides are outsiders, they can just claim they were passing by. It's a clever way to keep the school out of it. Brother Liu chuckles and tells Ife to head home. Immediately, his men close the circle around the terrified punks, demanding to know who sent them there. He tells them not to block the school entrance and suggests they go elsewhere to chat. Dozens of men then haul the small-time thugs away for a bit of an education. A moment later, the dean of students, Liu Xiaoping, rushes to the gate only to find the street strangely empty. He looks around, confused by the sudden silence. He asks what happened to the fight that was reported. The security guard swallows hard, explaining that he saw a student being confronted just a moment ago. He describes how a much larger group suddenly appeared and dragged the thugs away toward the left. It all happened so fast it felt like a coordinated strike. Dean Liu takes a sharp breath and asks if any of their students were actually hurt. The security guard shakes his head, trying to make sense of what he witnessed. He notes that the student involved seemed to walk away unharmed. Hearing this, Dean Liu finally breathes a sigh of relief, though he remains cautious about the situation. He immediately sends an urgent message to the faculty group chat, alerting all homeroom teachers about the outsiders fighting near the school entrance. He instructs them to check if any students know what happened or if anyone was injured. Soon, every teacher in the school is busy messaging their students for information. That evening, during the self-study period, the atmosphere in Class 4 is thick with hushed whispers as everyone tries to piece together the afternoon's events. The news explodes. Someone hiding at the school gate captured photos of Ife being pulled away by the yellow-haired youth, only for a massive crowd to suddenly charge out. Those little thugs were scared witless. It was quite a sight. Many thought Ife was finished, but who could have guessed he was the real boss with dozens of men? And these weren't just kids, but grown men. As the students discuss the event with excitement, their respect for Ife grows instantly. We remember when Zheng Yinsong was the big name. Back in 10th grade, Yinsong was famous for calling people to fight other classes at the gate. But it seems the top student who transferred from first high is even tougher. Shen Xinyue sighs, scribbling a note and tossing it to Zheng Yinsong. After reading it, Yinsong is so consumed by rage that he slams his books down in frustration. That very evening during self-study, Yinsong is summoned to the teacher's office. He's forced to stand there as punishment while writing a formal self-reflection letter. Meanwhile, back in the study hall, someone suddenly shouts for everyone to look. That famous novel about a dropout from first high has just been posted to their school forum. The ID looks incredibly familiar. The author claims to have transferred to second high and will continue updating there. Naturally, a crowd of girls becomes instantly energized. Zhang Shiqi stares with wide, disbelieving eyes. She turns to look at Wen Mengqi sitting behind her and whispers, asking if the author really is a transfer student. She instinctively glances at the empty seat next to Mengqi. She expected her friend to be shocked by the news, but to her surprise, Mengqi simply nods in confirmation. Shiqi can't help but let the truth slip out in her astonishment. Is it really Lin Yifei? She asks, her voice carrying across the quiet room. The entire classroom freezes and turns to look at them. The room erupts into a frenzy of whispers. Could Yifei really be the author? It seems almost too much to believe. Some thought a classmate wrote it, but Yifei is the only transfer from first high. Xinyue smiles, noting that it must be him. There's really no other explanation. Xinyue and Mengqi lock eyes, sharing a silent moment of understanding. Suddenly, Su Jiaying rushes over to Xinyue's side, speaking in a low, panicked voice. She asks if they should apologize. If even Zheng Yinsong couldn't handle him, she fears Yifei might send his people after them next. To be honest, she looks terrified. Xinyue sighs and tells her that won't happen, but suggests she apologize anyway. She tells her to write a proper letter of several hundred words to make amends. Jiaying nods frantically, tearing a page from her notebook to start writing immediately. After the first period of self-study ends, she approaches Mengqi with visible nerves. Stammering, she offers a sincere apology for the things she said earlier and hands over the letter. Xinyue steps forward then, her expression unusually serious. She apologizes as well, but adds that she has made a final decision. Jiaying is stunned by the tone, and Mengqi looks up, waiting to hear what comes next. Xinyue finds her courage and smiles, suggesting they compete fairly to see who can win Lin Yifei's heart. It seems the drama is only just beginning. Jiaying stands there with her mouth hanging open, staring at the two of them in utter disbelief. Even when Mengqi is stunned, as she never imagined a boy like Yifei would actually like her. she feels a bit lightheaded, as if she's floating on a spaceship. The next day, we return to school where Ife has officially become a legendary figure on campus. Students whisper as he passes, stealing glances, but never quite finding the courage to say hello. However, when he reaches the school cafeteria, he happens to run into his classmate, Lu Ziyang. Ziyang swallows hard in an awkward panic, stammering out an apology to Brother Fei for his past behavior. He claims he wasn't actually that close to Zheng Yensong and even tried to talk him out of the fight. Clearly, word has spread about how Yensong's thugs were the ones who got a lesson. Ife finds this change of heart quite amusing, noting that Ziyang certainly wasn't saying that yesterday. After that, the boy begins following him around like a loyal shadow. He keeps calling him Brother Fei and praising his novel, asking if the story will feature magical sorcerers or dark monsters from some mysterious spaceship. Ife wonders to himself if the boy is some kind of eccentric genius or just obsessed with supernatural tropes. To be honest, he can't be bothered to entertain the nonsense. Upon returning to the classroom, he is immediately surrounded by his classmates. He finally smiles and comes clean, admitting that yes, he is indeed the author of the novel. He laughs as he makes his way back to his seat, but he is surprised to find a portion of fried rice noodles and a bottle of pure milk waiting on his desk. He taps Jiang Shichi on the shoulder to ask who left the food. Shichi glances at the empty seat belonging to the English class representative and guesses it was a gift from her. Just then, when Mingqi returns to the classroom carrying her own bag of breakfast and a few textbooks. As soon as she sits down, Ife slides the noodles and milk toward her. He takes the breakfast she had bought for herself and swaps it for the gift on his desk. He suggests they trade meals with a casual smile. Mingqi frowns in confusion, asking him why he's doing this. She clearly doesn't understand the sudden gesture. He tells her to take a sip and personally feeds her the milk. She looks at him with a strange expression, and then, suddenly, she seems to have a realization. She asks if this is his way of avoiding paying her back. After a moment of deep thought, she concludes that her seatmate is trying to swallow up all her savings. Why else would he be so attentive so early in the morning? Ife lets out a laugh and asks if she really thinks he's that kind of person. He admits he's no saint, but he tells her he would never dream of scamming her. He assures her the money will be returned, just not right this second. Mingqi looks quite distressed, noting that it was all her New Year's money and her entire living allowance for the month. He proposes a deal. He will cover all her expenses for a while and pay her back with interest later. Mingqi narrows her eyes, muttering a question about whether he's serious. She wonders if this means he'll be the one swiping her meal card from now on. He then suggests setting up a family sharing card on her app with a monthly allowance, asking if 3,000 is enough. When Mingqi shakes her head, thinking that's far too much, insisting that 600 would be plenty. Ife rolls his eyes and tells her that she must spend at least 1,000 a month or she'll fail his little test. He tells her she's far too frugal and needs to learn how to treat herself. Without another word, he adds the family card to her account and sets the limit to 1,000. Mingqi lets out a stunned little sound and agrees to try. To be honest, he is quite amused by this little rich girl's reaction. A little later, their homeroom teacher, Liang Yuding, calls both Ife and Zheng Yensong out of the room. We see the other students stealing glances as they leave. In the hallway, teacher Liang stands with a stern expression, asking if they know why they're there. Ife just smiles and claims there was no fight at all. He explains it was his cousin's birthday and suggests she ask Yensong. He claims they are actually best friends, so why would they ever fight? Yensong is completely speechless, staring at him in utter disbelief. He can't believe the nerve of this guy calling them best friends. Teacher Liang asks if they're such good friends that they should sit together. At that, both boys shout no at the exact same time. Naturally, she crosses her arms, wondering why these best friends are so reluctant. Ife laughs and explains that they'd probably just spend the whole time chatting and neglecting their studies. Teacher Liang looks Ife over and notices he certainly doesn't look like someone who was in a brawl. As for Zheng Yensong, word is he spent yesterday afternoon stubbornly finishing a math test in the teacher's office. He clearly wasn't involved in any violence either. She decides not to call their parents for now. However, she warns Ife and Yensong that if she hears about any more conflict or outside thugs being called in, they won't be explaining it to her. They'll be heading straight to the dean's office. Understood? Ife smiles and agrees, then casually mentions he'd like to join the English-speaking competition she brought up before. Teacher Liang takes a deep breath and dismisses Yensong back to class. After that, she pulls Ife aside to speak with him privately. She asks if Yensong is actually bullying him and forcing him to keep quiet. At this point, Ife decides to give her a full report of what happened at the school gate. He describes the scene with the precision of a professional, leaving teacher Liang completely stunned. So much for them being best friends, it seems. Before heading back, he even advises her on how to report this to the school leaders. He suggests telling them those people were just there for a birthday party. As they pass the school gate, teacher Liang Yuding is easily charmed by his wit and breaks into a smile. Ife casually adds that she looks much better when she smiles. Teacher Liang, unable to handle the boy's smooth talking, playfully shoves him toward the classroom and tells him to get back to morning study. To be honest, she's quite amused. It seems his sugar-coated bullets worked, as she decides not to pursue the matter between the two boys any further. A moment later, teacher Liang stands at the front of the class. She announces that the four-school joint exam is tomorrow, and she'll be handing out the permits this afternoon. Regarding the English-speaking competition, she has an update. Since only 3 people signed up, there's no need for a selection process. The participants will be Yifei, Shen Xingyue, and Jiang Shiqi. She tells the 3 of them to start preparing. She also mentions the New Year's Gala, noting that every class needs at least 2 performances registered with the arts representative. Meanwhile, the classrooms at number 1 high school are buzzing with excitement. Word has spread that the novel previously updated there has moved to the number 2 high school forum. Rumor has it a transfer student is the author. After asking around, the students realize there's only been one senior transfer student lately. Could it really be Yifei? Suddenly, the chatter stops dead. Vice Principal Guo Haiba is standing at the back door, having overheard the entire conversation with a deepening frown. He demands to know who moved that number 1 high school novel over to the number 2 high school forum. The students in the classroom are left completely stunned. They exchange nervous glances, saying nothing. Vice Principal Guo, his face darkening, calls out for the class monitor. At that, Chun Jijia slowly stands up. With a bitter, awkward smile, Jijia admits he has no idea who the author is. Vice Principal Guo narrows his eyes in disbelief at this response. He counters by saying someone specifically told him a student from this very class wrote it. This revelation causes the room to erupt into a frenzy of whispers. The students wonder if it truly is Yifei. Jijia scratches his head and notes that since the novel is now at number 2 high school, the transfer student theory fits. If it's someone from their class, it almost certainly has to be Yifei. Vice Principal Guo pauses, remembering that the homeroom teacher claimed to have found the student. The teacher had said the student stopped writing to focus on the college entrance exams. It was supposed to be a closed matter. Jijia mentions he asked about it once, but the teacher told them to drop it, and the issue just faded away. Vice Principal Guo's expression turns incredibly grim. He tells them to continue their morning studies and abruptly leaves the room. As soon as his footsteps fade, the Class 2 classroom explodes with excitement once more. A crowd of students surrounds Sun Fei, convinced now that Yifei is indeed the author. Meanwhile, in the faculty office, we see the teachers busy with their work. Homeroom teacher Song Wenbao is organizing test papers when Vice Principal Guo suddenly marches in. Every teacher in the room looks up, sensing the shift in the air. Vice Principal Guo Haiba stands at the office door in an incredibly foul mood, curtly asking the Class 2 homeroom teacher to step outside for a moment. The two of them move to the hallway for a private conversation. When Guo reveals the novel is being updated on the number 2 high forum, Song Wenbao freezes. A cold sweat breaks out across Song's back. He had assumed that banning the account would end the matter, never imagining the boy would simply move elsewhere. With a stony face, Vice Principal Guo reminds him that he originally claimed to have spoken with the parents and that the updates stopped for academic reasons. He demands to know why the students are saying the author is actually the boy who dropped out. Song Wenbao can only offer a deeply awkward smile. As Song stammers, Guo loses his patience and snaps, telling him he knows exactly what he was doing by hiding the truth. He accuses Song of being too afraid to admit the author was the student who left after their argument. To be honest, it was a coward's move. Guo complains that this deception has put him in an impossible position, especially after what he told the leaders at the Education Bureau. He had specifically told them the student was prioritizing studies, but now those same leaders are headed to number 2 high school to observe classes. We learned that the timing couldn't be worse, as number 1 high, number 2 high, and other schools are all competing for a prestigious provincial demonstration title. They cannot afford to leave a bad impression. Guo orders Song to find a way to make the student delete the novel or bring it back to their own forum. Song Wenbao stands there with his mouth slightly open, completely stunned by the demand. Vice Principal Guo's expression remains deadly serious. He reminds Song that he is up for a senior teacher promotion this year, and if the school becomes a laughingstock, the consequences will be severe. He tells him to handle it immediately while the news is still contained. Either bring the updates back or make him stop entirely. Otherwise, it's an embarrassment. It would have been better to claim the author was an outsider from the start. Song Wenbao grits his teeth in frustration. He apologizes to the vice principal, promising that he won't let the school lose face on his watch. Guo nods, finally satisfied with the answer. The vice principal turns and walks away with his hands behind his back. Later, during the third period, Song Wenbao stands before his class. Before starting the lesson, he asks the students if anyone is still on good terms with Yifei. The students exchange curious, knowing glances. Sun Fei raises his hand with a grin, saying he's doing all right, while another student whispers the name of Chun Sairu. Song's eyes suddenly light up. He turns to Chun Sairu, noting her friendship with Yifei, and asks her to find out why the novel is no longer being updated at number 1 high school. He wants Yifei to return to the number 1 high forum and stop writing on the rival school's site. Chun Sairu hesitates, pointing out that since he's a student there now, it's only natural. She asks why he would ever come back. Song Wenbao simply smiles, suggesting she should persuade him by saying his old classmates miss his work. After all, they are friends, aren't they? He argues that it shouldn't matter where he posts. Meanwhile, we see Yifei focusing on his studies in class when he suddenly receives a message from Sun Fei. Sun Fei is laughing, telling him there's a show to watch. The principal came by to ask about the novel, and now the homeroom teacher is begging Sairu to bring him back. Ifei finds the situation quite ironic, replying jokingly that he has already deleted Sairu. Sun Fei realizes that's why the girl looked so awkward. She was too embarrassed to admit it. It really is a hilarious turn of events. Sure enough, a moment later, a friend request pops up on Ifei's phone. Shun Sairu is trying to reach out. Without a second thought, he rejects her request. He even goes as far as to turn around and flash a grin at the wealthy young lady sitting next to him, Wenmingqi. He reminds her not to forget their movie date this Saturday. Mengqi looks a bit piteous as she explains that she's actually run out of money, which is quite the predicament. The sheer absurdity of a rich girl being broke makes Ifei laugh so hard his stomach begins to ache. He can barely catch his breath. After about 10 minutes of class, Mengqi starts muttering to herself, realizing that using her metal card doesn't count as a date unless she pays for the tickets. Ifei leans over his desk, grinning ear to ear. To be honest, he finds Mengqi's internal logic to be absolutely adorable. But his laughter doesn't go unnoticed. The chemistry teacher stops the lesson and calls him out in front of everyone, asking exactly what he finds so funny. Realizing he's still in the middle of a lecture, Ifei stands up and tells the teacher he just thought of something very happy. Beside him, Mengqi's face turns bright red. She knows he's laughing at her and buries her head in her arms. Ifei quickly improvises, claiming he was solving a chemistry problem involving barium and sodium. He jokes that Ba plus 2Na equals banana, wondering if he's discovered a secret. The whole class erupts in laughter, though the teacher is less than impressed. The teacher tells him to focus on the lesson and save the outside problems for his free time. Finally, the lunch bell rings, signaling the end of the period. As soon as class is over, Shun Xinhua rushes to his desk, asking if he really rejected Sairu's friend request. Ifei pauses for a second before catching on. He realizes Sairu went to Xinhua for help. Xinhua chuckles at how heartless he's being, urging him to just add her back since she has something important to say. He coldly replies that there's no need for that. He turns to Mengqi, inviting her to go grab lunch, and the girl happily follows right behind him. Xinhua is left standing there, completely stunned, as it's likely the first time she's ever been ignored so directly. Nearby, Su Jiang approaches with a smirk, telling her it's time to go. We find ourselves in the cafeteria, where Ifei is standing in line and contemplating his lunch options when he notices the little rich girl, Wenmingqi. Her large eyes are watery as she gazes at him. He can't help but chuckle, asking Jiang Shiqi if someone has been bullying her. Shiqi simply shakes her head. Suddenly, Mengqi leans in and asks in a guilty, tiny voice if that girl from his old school is very beautiful. Ifei lets out a laugh, teasingly asking if she's jealous. Mengqi bites her lip and remains silent, her eyes filled with a certain sense of grievance. The three of them find a corner to eat and chat. Eventually, the topic of the upcoming arts festival comes up, and Mengqi looks at him curiously. Ifei falls silent for a few seconds before smiling, noting that he could sign up or not. Suddenly, Shiqi leans in to share a secret with him. She reveals that Mengqi won first prize at last year's festival. Ifei is genuinely surprised, while Mengqi shakes her head in bashful protest. She begs Shiqi to stop, but Shiqi just laughs, insisting this is her greatest strength before revealing that Mengqi is actually a piano prodigy. After finishing lunch and discussing the performance a bit more, Ifei decides to volunteer. Meanwhile, we see Chin Sairu entering the teacher's office. She apologizes to the teacher, claiming Ifei hurt her feelings and is ignoring her. She suggests the teacher should just call him directly. The homeroom teacher, Song Wenba, is stunned. He argues that as classmates, she should have a much easier time talking to him than he would. Sairu blushes and whispers that their good relationship is a thing of the past. Wenba tries his best to persuade her, sounding quite desperate. He tells her that boys are easily swayed and suggests she just say a few kind words. He even offers to pay for a meal if she invites him. He admits he bears some responsibility for how Ifei's withdrawal was handled. Sairu, feeling wronged, asks why he won't just call Ifei himself. She points out that it would be much simpler if he did it. Wenba freezes, his mouth hanging open as he struggles to find a response. Cyrus suddenly finds her courage and asks if he's simply afraid of losing face. At that, the homeroom teacher's expression instantly darkens. He snaps at her for talking nonsense and tells her to go back to class. Sairu quickly agrees and makes her exit from the office. However, as soon as the student is gone, Wenba immediately regrets his outburst. He smacks his forehead, realizing the mess he's in. Gritting his teeth, he pulls up the student directory on his computer. He stares at the phone number, but he just can't bring himself to dial. After hesitating repeatedly, he decides to call for Ifei's deskmate, Sun Fei. Soon, Sun Fei arrives and stands at attention in the office. Song Wenba forces a smile and reminds Sun Fei that since he was Ifei's deskmate, they must still be on good terms. He suggests that perhaps Sun Fei could convince Ifei to stop posting his novel on the No. 2 high school forum and wait until after the college entrance exams. The teacher tries to play it off as genuine concern for Ifei's studies, but Sun Fei, seeing right through him, asks why he still cares about a student who transferred. He points out that writing for No. 1 high school would be just as distracting, leaving Wenba to clear his throat awkwardly as he searches for an excuse. He insists it's different and asks again if Sun Fei can just talk to him, but Sun Fei hesitates, mentioning a slight complication. The teacher's eyes light up with hope, asking what the problem is, while Sun Fei sheepishly scratches his head. He explains that he actually owes Fei some money, making it quite embarrassing to reach out to him right now. Wenbao waves it off, asking how much the debt is and offering to pay it himself, which leaves Sun Fei in complete disbelief. Realizing that the school's reputation and his own promotion are on the line, the teacher suddenly becomes very generous. He tells Sun Fei that since he's asking for a favor, it's only fair, and asks for the amount one more time. Sun Fei reveals it's 400 yuan, and Wenbao, gritting his teeth, agrees to pay it if Sun Fei will just talk to Fei. He emphasizes that it would be best, ideally, of course, if Fei waited until after the exams to continue his writing. He blathers on about how this is a critical stage in life, while Sun Fei struggles to hold back a laugh at the teacher's desperation. Sun Fei pretends to be unsure, saying he can't guarantee results and suggesting he should just wait until he has his own money to pay Fei back. Afraid to lose his chance, Wenbao pulls out his phone immediately, offering to scan a code and pay the debt right then and there. He tells Sun Fei he won't have to pay him back as long as he puts his heart into persuading Fei to stop writing. Wenbao insists he's a man of his word and actually transfers the 400 yuan, prompting Sun Fei to head back to class. Sun Fei promises to update him as soon as Fei responds, but the moment he steps out of the office, his demeanor changes completely. He immediately sends Fei a message, laughing about how he just made a fortune because Wenbao paid him to stop the novel. It seems our homeroom teacher is truly desperate, and Fei can't help but smile, deciding that tonight's update will be a special celebration. Later that evening, while everyone else was busy studying for the upcoming 4-school joint exams, Fei was focused on something else entirely, registering an online shop. He remembered that in a few years, e-commerce would explode in a massive wave, and while opening a shop now wasn't exactly being the first to the table. It was certainly early enough to catch the momentum before online shopping truly began to dominate the economy. As for what he would actually sell, he wasn't looking to build a long-term brand, but rather to make a quick profit in the short term. So, he chose a very niche and often overlooked industry: selling novelty lingerie. Of course, being a student meant he had to keep things low-key, but luckily, having turned 18 last month, he met the legal requirements. Suddenly, a message from Sun Fei popped up on his screen, practically screaming in disbelief. "Holy crap, Fei, has your account been hacked?" Fei laughed and told him he was just opening a shop, but Sun Fei wasn't buying it. In his mind, Fei was the ultimate man of steel, a stoic science ace. To be honest, it was impossible for Sun Fei to imagine his studious friend sending him photos of such provocative clothing, let alone planning to sell them. The most shocking part was that Fei actually meant it. Since he didn't have many close friends he could trust with this, he had sent the photos to Sun Fei for an opinion. And so, we see him working late into the night. It wasn't until 10:30 that he finally finished selecting the samples and uploading all the product photos. After finishing a few practice test papers, he finally drifted off to sleep. Early the next morning, he arrived at the classroom, ready for the big day. Not long after, the proctor arrived. Amidst the tension, Lu Ziang turned to Fei with a grin and asked how he felt about the Chinese language exam. Fei replied that if all went well, he should be at the top of the grade. Ziang gave him a thumbs up, impressed, but his praise was quickly interrupted. A familiar, sharp voice cut through the air, warning that anyone aiming for the top shouldn't let him catch them cheating. Fei looked up and was stunned. The proctor was none other than Lu Chong, the dean of No. 1 high school. He then remembered that for these joint exams, teachers from the 4 schools were swapped. Lu Chong ordered everyone to put away their books and review materials immediately, warning that anyone caught with a cheat sheet would have their paper confiscated. He added that while he didn't know how No. 2 high handled things at his school, cheating meant an immediate call to the parents, which, naturally, was a dire threat. After shooting Fei a pointed look, Lu Chong handed out the papers, and Fei began writing immediately. Over an hour passed in what seemed like a blink. With a slight smile, Fei raised his hand and asked if he could turn in his exam early. He glanced at the clock on the wall. There were still 45 minutes left. There was no point in wasting time sitting there. However, Lu Chong gave a cold smile and reminded everyone that the college entrance exams were still ahead. Technically, turning in a paper more than 30 minutes early wasn't allowed, but Fei timed it perfectly, handing his in the very second that window opened. Lu Chong, the dean from No. 1 high, took the paper and pulled Fei aside for a private chat. Frowning, he asked a question that had been bothering him. He wanted to know if Fei was the one writing that novel on the school forum, noting he'd never shown such a talent before. Fei just smiled at the dean. He mentioned hearing that the Education Bureau leaders had praised his work and cheekily asked the dean to remind them he was now at No. 2 high. Lu Chong's face darkened instantly. He snapped that a little praise shouldn't go to Fei's head, insisting that the entrance exams required real study, not hobbies. He called the writing a waste of time, to which Fei calmly replied that the dean was, of course, absolutely right about everything. As we see Fei walking away, the dean immediately pulled out his phone to message Song Wenbao, the class teacher, fuming about how arrogant the boy had become. He demanded the situation be handled. Wenba replied that since Yifei refused to delete the story, they should instead organize a school-wide literature competition. He argued that with so many students at number 1 high, someone was bound to outshine Yifei. If they produced a better story, the problem would solve itself. Lu Chang's eyes lit up at the idea, deciding to suggest it to the principal immediately. And to be honest, number 1 high moved surprisingly fast on this. By the time the Chinese exam ended, teachers were already spreading the word. It was to be a novel writing contest with gold, silver, and bronze prizes. The principal himself would award the medals, and the best works would even be archived in the school library. It was quite a prestigious incentive. Because the activity included all 3 grades, many students responded with enthusiasm. Soon, the school forum was buzzing with new creative energy. Several students began posting their own novels right away, hoping to claim the top spot. Meanwhile, news of the competition reached our protagonist's circle. While they were eating, Jiang Shi mentioned the contest and looked expectantly at Yifei, who was sitting right next to Wenminqi. The conversation shifted to how Yifei seemed to have predicted the exam topics, specifically those regarding environmental governance and waste recycling. Jiang Shi couldn't help but praise him, calling him impressive and wondering if everyone at number 1 high could predict exam questions so accurately. As Mengqi ate and checked her phone, Yifei chuckled and said his predictions were just more accurate than most. He then turned to her with a reminder. He told Mengqi not to stand him up for the movie they'd planned for tomorrow. That afternoon, the focus shifted to the science and English exams. As the final bell rang, the proctors began collecting the papers. We see the students standing up and stretching, exhausted from the long day of testing. As the students stretched their weary limbs, the atmosphere in the room finally began to relax. Yifei simply smiled and insisted it was just good luck, while when Mengqi returned to the classroom, happily telling Jiang Shi how easy the English essay had been for her. Just then, their English teacher and homeroom instructor, Liang Yuding, stepped onto the podium with a smile. She announced there would be no English homework this weekend, before mentioning the literature competition number 1 high was organizing. As she spoke, many students instinctively turned their heads to look at Yifei in the back row. Our school, she explained, wouldn't be doing a writing contest. Instead, with only 100 days left until the college entrance exams, the school planned to organize specialized study groups. However, at that moment, Yifei raised his hand. He politely suggested that while many schools use study groups, the results are often disappointing. He proposed a more flexible approach. Instead of fixed groups, they should implement a system where students take turns teaching. This way, everyone could play to their strengths. After all, teaching others is the best way to solidify one's own knowledge. Students with weaknesses could then choose the student teacher who best suited their needs, rather than being limited to a single assigned partner. The suggestion was met with nods of approval. Leave it to the top student to find the most efficient solution. Soon, Friday classes ended amidst laughter. The arrival of the weekend had everyone in high spirits, but Yifei found himself quite surprised by a small detail. It turned out that Mengqi, despite her family's hidden wealth, took the bus home. No wonder no one realized just how rich her family actually was back then. Saturday morning passed in a blink. By 2 in the afternoon, Yifei arrived at Wanda Plaza for his long-awaited date with Mengqi. He had come well prepared, carrying 2 cups of milk tea and a delicate bracelet he'd bought as a gift. A moment later, he spotted a familiar figure. Mengqi appeared wearing a simple white dress and carrying a small matching bag. To be honest, she looked quite elegant. Standing about 5'4" in her small heels, she possessed a natural grace that caught the eye immediately. Even without makeup and still wearing her glasses, her beauty was undeniable. It was the first time he had ever seen her out of her school uniform. Feeling a bit shy, Mengqi nervously fidgeted with her fingers and softly asked if she looked okay. Yifei couldn't help but chuckle warmly. He assured her she looked lovely, then handed her the milk tea and the gift box, gently insisting she take it. Yifei smiled as he placed the gift in her hands, suggesting she open it and exchange it if she didn't like it. Mengqi carefully opened the box. She froze for a moment, completely stunned. He offered to help her put it on, but she was so dazed she couldn't even react. Before she knew it, the bracelet was already on her wrist. Then, Yifei took her hand and led her into the mall. It was clearly her first time. Holding hands with a boy made her incredibly shy. She tried to pull away at first, but eventually let him lead her as she followed obediently. We see them reach the 4th floor, where the cinema was packed since it was the weekend. He told her to wait while he got the tickets. He asked if she wanted popcorn, though he quickly realized it was a silly question. Our little heiress Mingqi was already staring. She was practically drooling while watching a child nearby eat popcorn. Just then, a familiar voice called out Yifei's name. Sun Fei shouted excitedly, surprised to see him there. Yifei turned to find Sun Fei and 2 other classmates from number 1 high in line behind him. After a brief chat, he returned to Mingqi with popcorn and orange juice, smiling as he told her it was time for their tickets to be checked. When he mentioned seeing their classmates, Mingqi was suddenly terrified, burying her head in her hands to avoid being recognized. Her adorable reaction nearly made him burst out laughing. To be honest, even without makeup, Mengqi's natural beauty was quite striking. She was only unpopular at school because of her shy personality. Meanwhile, Sun Fei and the others began teasing them from a distance. Wang Songtao even managed to sneak a photo and sent it to their class group chat, which immediately erupted with gossip about Ifei being a player. The students wondered why he was at the movies with another girl when he liked Chin Sairu. Someone even tagged Sairu in the chat. They teased her about how his heart had changed after transferring schools. Sairu said nothing, but she gritted her teeth and forwarded the photo to Shun Xinyue. Xinyue was shocked, asking where the photo was taken. She explained it was from their classmates who ran into Ifei at the cinema. She claimed that the girl in the photo was a laughingstock in their class and couldn't believe Ifei would actually choose her. Xinyue then proceeded to tell Sairu everything she knew about Ifei and Minchi. Back in the theater, the two sat in a quiet corner. Ifei leaned in and whispered, asking if this was her first time at the movies with a boy. She nodded blankly while munching on popcorn. She simply remarked how delicious it was, which made him chuckle. He wondered why no one had ever asked her out before. Minchi hesitated for a moment before making a playful face, refusing to give him any popcorn. He then asked if she had snuck out today, and she nodded like a little chick pecking at grain. She even made a quiet, shushing gesture, looking quite mischievous. When he asked if she had to go home for dinner, Minchi looked stunned, as if the answer were obvious. She nodded, but then suddenly crossed her arms over her chest in a protective stance, staring at Ifei with suspicion. He couldn't help but laugh at her reaction. He clarified that he was only asking if she wanted to eat out first or go straight home, not questioning her curfew. Minchi realized she had completely misunderstood his intentions. Her ears turned a soft shade of red from embarrassment as she let out a small, shy sound. To be honest, our little heiress was incredibly adorable, and at least she knew how to protect herself. It was good to know she wouldn't be easily fooled by just any boy. By the time the movie ended, it was already 5:30. After seeing Minchi off, Ifei didn't head home immediately. Instead, he sent a message to Sun Fei, arranging to meet for dinner nearby. He told Sun Fei that he actually needed a favor, specifically involving his cousin. He asked if the cousin was still working as a manager at the internet cafe. Sun Fei was taken aback, wondering if Ifei had offended someone else and needed backup again. Ifei laughed and shook his head, explaining that he wasn't in trouble. He simply needed people to make purchases at his online store to boost his sales rankings. He then carefully explained the commission and the process. In the blink of an eye, the weekend flew by. Sun Fei certainly worked fast, as it turned out. He managed to recruit over 30 people to help. Ifei was kept busy from 3 in the afternoon until 7 in the evening, leaving him feeling completely exhausted and dizzy. Just as he was about to rest, we see the class group chat erupt with activity. Their teacher, Liang Yuding, had posted a message regarding a classmate named Zheng Yensong. It seemed Yensong's grandmother was hospitalized with a brain condition, and his father had been in a car accident the previous week. The family was facing a very difficult time. The teacher hoped everyone could lend a helping hand. She planned to visit the grandmother at the hospital the following week along with the class president. Ifei paused, and then a sudden spark of inspiration hit him. He told himself that giving a man a fish is never as good as teaching him how to catch one. A simple donation wouldn't be much, but giving Yensong a job could actually help him earn a living. He got Yensong's number from the teacher and called to learn about his situation. After Ifei explained how the business worked, Yensong was completely impressed. He immediately agreed to join Ifei and start working together. The next morning was spent reviewing the 4 school joint exam papers. After lunch, someone suddenly tapped Ifei on the shoulder while he was at his desk. He looked up to see his Chinese teacher, Luo Wenshuan, standing at the classroom door. The teacher was smiling, holding the results of the joint examination. He told Ifei that he had done remarkably well. Out of their entire school, there were only 2 perfect scores on the essay section, and Ifei had one of them. Ifei's eyes lit up at the news, though he couldn't help but wonder what would happen if he didn't secure the top spot in the entire school, especially after he had boldly told the teacher not to worry about him during class. His Chinese teacher, Luo Wenshuan, gave him a knowing, half-smile and told him he'd just have to wait for the final results to see for himself. Then, he asked if Ifei was certain that his novel was entirely his own work and not plagiarized. Ifei nodded firmly, and Wenshuan smiled, explaining that he just needed to confirm because leaders from the Bureau of Education were coming for an inspection the very next day. It turns out the first high school had organized a major literary competition. While their own school didn't have one yet, they were planning to establish a literature club for the second-year students to foster reading and writing skills. The principal's idea was to have Ifei participate in an open class as a student role model. He wanted him to share his writing experiences and explain how he started on this creative path. Since the visiting leaders might attend this open class, the teacher suggested that if Ifei had time tomorrow, he should organize the plot of his novel and select some excerpts to share. This would make his speech a bit more persuasive, of course. When Ifei returned to the classroom, Jiang Shiqi looked up curiously and asked what the teacher wanted with him. Ifei smiled slightly and told her it was nothing major, just that he had ranked 4th in the entire grade for Chinese. Naturally, this news caused his nearby classmates to swarm around him in excitement. He added that there were only 2 perfect scores on the essay in the whole school, and he had claimed one of them. His classmates immediately looked at him with eyes full of pure envy. Then, a student named Guoyenza couldn't stop himself from laughing as he asked Ifei if he had seen the rankings for the literary competition over at First High School recently. He explained that the school had set up a popularity poll, and the results were honestly hilarious. He asked Ifei if he had any idea who was currently sitting in first place. It was Ifei himself, or more accurately, his novel had the highest number of votes. To be perfectly honest, the gap between him and the rest was staggering. He was completely crushing the competition. Even if you added the votes of the 2nd through 10th place contestants together, they still wouldn't reach Ifei's total. Meanwhile, at First High School, things were much more tense. We see the vice principal, Gua Haiba, in his office, practically gasping with rage at the situation. It was a complete embarrassment for the school. The class teacher, Song Wenba, opened the website to take a look and was left utterly speechless. The combined votes of the next 9 rankings couldn't even touch the number 1 spot. A nervous Wenba tried to explain to Vice Principal Gua that the leaderboard surely wasn't accurate and that the results were essentially meaningless under the circumstances. He argued that since Ifei had already dropped out of their school, he didn't meet the competition rules, making his ranking irrelevant. However, Vice Principal Haiba only responded with a mocking laugh. He called Wenba a fool and asked if he realized how much of a joke the school had become. He demanded that they find a way to fix this immediately. He wanted to see a work that could actually rival Ifei's novel right away, so they could knock him off that top spot and reclaim their dignity. Teacher Wenba took a deep breath, and then a sudden spark of inspiration hit him. He told the vice principal that he had an idea. Perhaps they could try a different approach. Song Wenba suggested finding a teacher to write a piece and snatch back that top spot. But Vice Principal Gua Haiba hesitated before asking for clarification. When asked if he meant a teacher should write it, Wenba smiled and reminded him that Teacher Liu had published books before, so it would be no problem. Gua Haiba shook his head, noting that it would be cheating and look bad for a teacher to beat a student. But Wenba clarified his real plan. He didn't mean for the teacher to write it personally, but rather to provide one-on-one coaching to a student. However, the vice principal just waved him off. He decided it wasn't worth the trouble, assuming the leaders already knew about Ifei's transfer, so he ordered the ranking deleted instead. They would issue a formal statement that the contest was for current students only. Meanwhile, back at our protagonist's school, the atmosphere was much brighter. Ifei had tied for first in the class and third in the entire grade, proving he was a true top student as everyone watched him with envy. As the teachers brought in the various subject results, the homeroom teacher, Liang Yuding, announced she had a massive surprise for the class. She revealed that the top-ranked student in the entire grade for Chinese was in their room, causing Jiang Shiqi to turn back to Ifei with a grin. Ifei waved it off, insisting he was only 4th, but a second later, Teacher Liang smiled and confirmed that it was indeed Ifei who took the top spot. The classmates were confused, whispering that he had just claimed to be 4th, which left Teacher Liang looking quite surprised herself. A student explained that the Chinese teacher had mentioned the 4th place ranking earlier, but Teacher Liang immediately stepped in to correct the record. She declared that he was the absolute number 1 in the grade, a statement met with thunderous applause and even an admiring look from Wenmingqi. Ifei just rubbed his nose and chalked it up to luck, though deep down, he knew it was because he was essentially doing this for the second time. Teacher Liang told them they'd hear more about his perfect essay later. Meanwhile, back at First High School, the mood was far more somber. As Teacher Liu Yun handed out the graded papers, students began whispering in awe at anyone who managed to score a 53 on the essay. However, the teacher sighed in disappointment, noting that even though the essay topics were shared in advance, the results were still underwhelming. Many students had only managed scores in the 40s, leading the teacher to turn towards Sun Fei and ask how he had performed. Sun Fei lowered his head in embarrassment, admitting he hadn't done well, which prompted the teacher to lament that he had wasted his time as Ifei's former seatmate. Sun Fei tried to argue that Ifei wasn't good at Chinese either, but Liu Yun calmly replied that while she shouldn't care about a transfer student, she had to admit that Ifei was truly impressive, as he had ranked 4th in Chinese across all 4 schools, and even earned a perfect score on his essay. Sun Fei stared in disbelief, arguing that he remembered Ifei being terrible at Chinese and wondering if he had somehow started cheating after transferring schools. Teacher Liu Yun rolled her eyes and joked that perhaps he was simply working harder there than he ever did here, though Sun Fei found that idea quite hilarious. He knew Ifei wasn't studying. He was busy running an online shop selling monster-themed lingerie and going on movie dates with girls. As the final bell rang, we see Ifei standing by the stairs, looking at the rankings posted in the hallway, while Jiang Shiqi and Wenmingqi stood beside him in awe. They marveled at his results, 1st in Chinese, 3rd in math, and 3rd in English. It seemed only his science comprehensive score was lagging a bit behind. Even so, his total score put him at 10th in the entire grade. Shiqi remarked with envy that if he could just raise that science score, he'd be unstoppable. In his past life, Chinese had been his weakness while science and math were his strengths, with English sitting somewhere comfortably in the middle. However, subjects like chemistry and biology require a lot of rote memorization, knowledge that had completely evaporated from his mind years after graduation. So, having returned to the past, he felt these scores were actually quite decent. Meanwhile, Mengqi pointed to her own name and pulled at his sleeve. Our little heiress, Mengqi, had landed in 41st place for the grade. She pointed her slender finger at her impressive science score with a hint of pride. She looked at him as if showing off her achievement, prompting Ife to smile and admit that she had indeed done quite well on the exam. He instinctively pinched her nose and suggested that if she raised her scores a bit more, she could skip the Shanghai Conservatory and aim for Yinjing instead. That way, they could still see each other. Shiqi, standing nearby, asked in surprise if he really intended to go to school in Yinjing and which university he wanted. He answered quite naturally that he was aiming for Qingmei University, leaving Mengqi dazed as she wondered how he knew she planned on Shanghai. Relying on the memories of his previous life, he remembered clearly that she had gone to the Shanghai Conservatory of Music, a top-tier art school. But as a regressor, he was determined to get into the country's absolute top institution, knowing the diploma, social circles, and future prospects would be entirely different. Besides, the thing he was most confident in right now was the college entrance exam itself. Once that was over, he would lose his primary advantage. He knew that his time in university would be the perfect opportunity to build his foundation. To be honest, he was already thinking several steps ahead. With these thoughts in mind, he looked at his friends, realizing that this time, he could choose a completely different path for his future. After all, he knew which works would become hits in the future, but relying solely on memory to perfectly recreate classics wasn't a guarantee. At this moment, with the financial backing of his little heiress friend, he realized e-commerce might be a much smoother shortcut to success. The next morning, as we returned to school, he received a call from his Chinese teacher, Luo Wenshuan, asking him to stop by the office. He hurried to the classroom to drop off his bag, only to find another breakfast waiting on his desk. Just then, Shen Xinyue ran over with a grin, asking why he'd bought his own when she had already brought him one. Then, she leaned in and whispered monster lingerie into his ear with a giggle before skipping back to her seat. To be honest, she had stumbled upon the truth quite by accident. She had seen Zheng Yinsung's social media posts about packing express shipments and, after a bit of private messaging, discovered a world of secrets she hadn't known about. Ife gave a helpless smile and told her not to breathe a word of it. Xinyue happily swapped his breakfast for hers, looking quite pleased with herself. She told him he had to eat her food and forbidden him from giving it to Wenmingqi, or she'd reveal his secret. He frowned playfully, asking if she was actually threatening him. Xinyue replied in a coquettish tone, claiming she just wanted him to eat her breakfast. She knew he had given her last meal to Mingqi, and she knew about their movie date too. She wondered aloud why he wouldn't give her a chance, as she didn't see herself as inferior to Mingqi. She had always had a soft spot for top students, and after this exam, her interest in him had only deepened. Even though he was her elementary school classmate and had once pursued her friend, she didn't seem to mind that at all. After all, Chen Sairu had already confirmed they were never officially together, just a bit of flirtation. And besides, those bridges were well and truly burned now. Xinyue felt particularly competitive, convinced she was prettier and more charming than the quiet Mingqi. Why, she wondered, should she lose to such a shy girl? Ife didn't miss a beat, telling her that if she blocked Sairu and got into a top-tier university like Qingbei, he might actually consider it. Just then, the bell for the first period rang, and the physics teacher, Nanguishin, stepped into the room. He noted that everyone should have seen their results by now and told them to get their papers out. He then called out, asking where Lin Ife was. Ife raised his hand, signaling his presence, which prompted a rather pointed look from the teacher. The teacher joked that the boy was clearly picking favorites, scoring high in Chinese, math, and English while letting his science marks slip. With that, he began the lesson. He was clearly the type of teacher who valued efficiency above all else. By the second period, we see school officials beginning their rounds through the hallways. A leader stopped at the classroom door, asking if this was the room with the transfer student from the first high school they had discussed earlier. The dean, Lu Xiaoping, walked in with a smile, gave a quick nod to the physics teacher, and called out for Ife to step outside for a moment. As Ife stood up, he was instantly the center of attention, every classmate's eyes following him. He walked slowly out of the classroom and gave the teachers a polite nod. After greeting them, Dean Lu Xiaoping told him not to be nervous, introducing Director Song from the Provincial Education Bureau along with several other high-ranking officials. Director Song smiled warmly, asking if he was the author of that famous post about leaving the first high school. To be honest, his reputation had clearly preceded him. The director noted that since Ife had transferred from the first high school, he must have a unique perspective on both institutions, especially given his excellent grades. He began to ask about the transfer, but Dean Lu quickly interjected, explaining that while the boy had a bit of a temper and had been in a fight, his academic record was stellar. He had been in the top 10 at the first high school, and we see he maintained that rank here at the second high school during the recent four-school joint exams. Director Song remarked that fighting was certainly wrong, but he wanted to know the biggest difference Ife felt between the two schools and which atmosphere was better for learning. The question was so sudden that Dean Lu felt a wave of anxiety, watching Ife tensely. Our protagonist paused for a moment before finding his words. He admitted that while the academic pressure at the first high school was much higher, he personally found himself preferring the environment here at the second high school. Hearing this, Dean Liu couldn't help but beam with a wide, eight-toothed smile. The director, intrigued, asked him to explain exactly why he felt that way. Ife explained that at the first high school, it felt as though he wasn't studying for himself, but for the school, his parents, and the heavy burden of not letting them down. He felt that this philosophy placed immense pressure on students, often leaving them feeling resentful. He recalled how his former teachers would constantly lecture the students. Even the dean there would tell them that studying was their only priority and that they must never forget how hard their parents worked to send them to such a prestigious school. Ife believed that while filial piety and repaying one's parents are important, constantly hammering these concepts into students' heads could be detrimental to their personal growth. It made it seem as though they were only studying for the sake of others. However, he noticed that life at the second high school followed a very different rhythm. At his old school, physical education was just free time, yet most students would simply crawl back to the classroom to study more, which, naturally, wasn't very healthy. As a result, their physical health suffered. But here at the second high school, everyone is required to run 800 meters during PE class, no exceptions. After the run, students are encouraged to play and rest. It might not look as intense as the first high school, but it offers a much better balance between work and play. In his view, the educational philosophy here was fundamentally different. While the first high school might have a slight edge when it comes to pure test scores, he felt the second high school focused more on the all-around development of a student's character, mind, and body, qualities that would matter far more after graduation. He concluded that students from the second high school might ultimately become more well-rounded individuals, though he humbly noted these were just his personal observations after a short time there. The officials from the Education Bureau nodded in approval after hearing this, impressed by his logic and noting that the boy certainly had the sharp mind of a writer. Director Song even joked with the dean that if this hadn't been a spontaneous interview, he would have suspected the entire speech had been carefully rehearsed in advance.